Imagine this. A 27-year-old alpha king, unmarried, ridiculously good-looking, and completely unbothered, casually strolling through the city while his mother passes him passive-aggressive reminders that he is, apparently, about to die a virgin. He responds with, "Mother, if dying single is a crime, I expect a pardon for being fabulous." Meanwhile, somewhere across town, a 35-year-old Omega is literally body-slamming her cheating husband and his mistress in front of their house because apparently the neighborhood needed entertainment. And here's the kicker. The Alpha King and his mother happen to witness this chaos. Everyone else gasps. Oren's jaw drops. He falls in love. His mother faints. The universe shrugs. Welcome to a kingdom where romance starts with a punch and a dramatic feint. At exactly 7:02 in the morning, the King Oren Valcrest was being emotionally harassed, over toast. Not war, not taxes, not assassination attempts. Toast. Because across the royal breakfast table, his mother, Queen Melira Valcrest, professional drama distributor, placed her teacup down with the gravity of someone about to ruin a man's entire morning. Then she sighed. Not a normal sigh. A generational disappointment sigh. "My son," she said solemnly, "I have seen abandoned castles with more romantic progress than your life." Oren didn't even look up from buttering his bread. "Good morning to you too, Mother. Did you stretch before choosing violence today?" She ignored him. Because queens don't argue. They persist aggressively. "At this rate," Melira continued, hand dramatically on chest, "you will die untouched, unbothered, and historically embarrassing." Oren finally looked up. Slowly, carefully, like a man deciding whether today was the day he faked his own disappearance. "Mother," he said calmly, "if I die, it will not be from lack of romance." She leaned forward. "Oh?" He smiled sweetly. "It will be from your daily attempts to assassinate my peace." Across the table, a servant quietly pretended not to hear anything. Poor man was fighting for his employment and his soul. "Before we continue, yes, you, if you enjoy chaos, dramatic mothers, and men who are one family dinner away from emotional collapse, go ahead and subscribe. Because the way this story is about to unfold? If you blink, you will miss violence, romance, and at least 3 people losing their dignity in public. And honestly, you don't want to be the only one in the comments asking, "Wait, what happened?" Good. Now sit properly. The embarrassment is just warming up. Queen Melira wasn't finished ruining her son's appetite, not even close. She folded her hands like a woman preparing a royal execution. "Oren," she said sweetly, which was always suspicious, "you are 27 years old." "Yes, Mother. I was present for the experience." "You are unmarried." "Tragic." "You have shown," she continued, voice tightening, "a level of romantic inactivity that is beginning to concern the ancestors." Oren took a long sip of juice. Very calm, very unbothered. "Mother, with respect, the ancestors have been dead for centuries. I refuse to be peer-pressured by ghosts." One of the nearby maids choked, coughed, turned it into a fake sneeze. Queen Melira's eye twitched. "My son," she said slowly, "normal men your age have heirs." Oren leaned back in his chair, relaxed. Dangerously relaxed. "Normal men also lose arguments with their wives daily. I am protecting my peace in advance." Melira slapped the table, not hard, but with royal emphasis. "This is not a joke!" Oren blinked at her. Then, the absolute menace, he reached for another piece of bread. "Mother," he said gently, "everything before noon is a joke." She stared at him. He smiled back. This was a woman who had survived court politics, 3 attempted coups, and 1 very aggressive royal wedding season. But her son? Her son was her villain origin story. You think this is funny, she said, narrowing her eyes. But mark my words, Oren Valcrest. One day you will see a woman who will completely overturn your peace. Oren snorted. Actually snorted. With my standards? Mother, please. The day I fall helplessly in love is the day the palace cook seasoned the food correctly. From the corner, a cook whispered, Disrespectful. Melira leaned back slowly and smiled. Not a happy smile. Oh no. This was the smile of a woman who had just made a mental note to remember this moment forever. We shall see, she said softly. Late evening. The sun was dipping low, the streets were calm, the evening breeze was peaceful, which is exactly why the universe decided it was time to ruin everything. King Oren and Queen Melira were halfway through their evening stroll when, smack! A loud, violent sound echoed down the street, followed by shouting, then another smack. Then the very unmistakable sound of a grown man experiencing immediate regret. Oren paused mid-step. His mother froze beside him. From up ahead, as a crowd was forming, and at the center of it, someone was yelling, someone was crying, and someone, judging by the rhythm, was getting absolutely handled. Oren slowly raised one brow. Well, he murmured. Queen Melira sighed in deep royal exhaustion. I already don't like where this is going. And unfortunately for her blood pressure, neither did fate. Nothing, and I mean nothing, unites a neighborhood faster than the sound of a wife discovering plot twists in real time. The evening street, which had been peaceful 5 minutes ago, now looked like front-row seats to poor decisions. Live edition. In the center of the chaos, a woman was swinging, not wildly, not blindly, professionally. King Oren Valcrest stopped walking. Queen Melira Valcrest stopped breathing. Because what they were witnessing was not a misunderstanding, but this was a scheduled emotional correction. You brought her to my house? The voice rang across the street like a church bell of consequences. There she stood. The Omega. Tall, broad-shouldered, dressed simply, but glowing with the dangerous energy of a woman who had finally run out of patience and mercy at the same time. Her name, though the crowd did not yet know it, was Serenia Vale. And at this exact moment, Serenia Vale was rearranging her husband's life choices, with accuracy, with rhythm, with upper body strength that was frankly starting to concern witnesses. Smack. The husband stumbled. Serenia, wait, listen. Smack. Oh, I am listening, she said sweetly. I'm just multitasking. Behind him, the unfortunate mistress stood frozen, clutching her shawl like she had personally ordered this disaster from the universe. Wrong address, wrong husband, very wrong day. Neighbors had gathered with the speed of people who paid zero rent for entertainment. One old woman was fanning herself. A teenage boy whispered, She warned him, though. Another man had the audacity to bring roasted peanuts, because apparently accountability was now a spectator sport. Queen Melira was scandalized, utterly scandalized. My son, she whispered sharply, we should leave. Oren did not move. Could not move. Because while everyone else was seeing violence, the man was seeing the most breathtaking woman he had ever laid eyes on. Serenia grabbed her husband by the collar, leaned in, and delivered the calmest, deadliest line of the evening. You didn't cheat by accident, she said softly. Your legs knew the address. The crowd collectively inhaled. Even the peanuts stopped crunching. And Oren? Oren's soul quietly packed its bags. He leaned slightly toward his mother, voice low, reverent. Mother. Queen Melira was still mid-horror. Yes? Oren did not blink. I think my future just slapped someone. Melira turned her head. Slowly. like a woman already sensing medical distress approaching. You cannot be serious. Oren exhaled softly, still watching Serenia like a man who had just discovered oxygen was optional. I have never been more serious in my life. Meanwhile, Serenia is not done. The husband, sweaty and desperate, tried one last foolish maneuver. Serenia, you're overreacting. Silence fell. Serenia slowly tilted her head. The crowd leaned in. Even the mistress whispered, "Oh no." Serenia smiled. Not warmly. Not kindly. Or the kind of smile that makes insurance companies nervous. Overreacting? She repeated. Then, smooth as destiny, she released his collar, only to shove him backward so cleanly the man nearly sat down on his own bad decisions. Gasps. Actual gasps. Queen Melira grabbed her chest. My blood pressure. But Oren? Oren was gone. Spiritually, emotionally, romantically deceased. Serenia straightened, breathing steady, dignity fully intact despite the public chaos, and for just 1 second. She looked up, right toward the edge of the crowd, right toward him. Their eyes met. Brief, electric, dangerous in a way neither of them had scheduled for today. Serenia frowned slightly, like she could already tell this man looked like future inconvenience. Oren, meanwhile, looked like a man who had just seen the trailer for the rest of his life. Much later that night, back in the palace, Queen Melira was still recovering emotionally when her son walked in looking entirely too peaceful, too certain, too suspiciously calm. He poured himself a drink, took one satisfied sip, then said the 5 words that would personally attack his mother's remaining lifespan. Mother, I've chosen my wife. Melira shot to her feet. Hope, joy, victory, finally. Oh, thank the heavens, she cried. Who is the fortunate woman? Oren smiled softly, dreamily, like a man already mentally planning matching outfits. The Omega, he said gently. Pause. Melira blinked. Which Omega? Oren set down his glass, completely serene. The one, he said, who was beating her husband in the street. Silence. Deep, ancestral, violent silence. Queen Melira's eyes rolled back so fast they nearly filed paperwork. And then she fainted. Hard, dramatically, with full royal commitment. There are many ways to shock a royal mother. Mild disappointment, scandalous rumors, budget meetings. But if you truly want to see a woman meet her ancestors briefly and return, tell her you plan to marry the neighborhood's most enthusiastic husband beater, because Queen Melira Valcrest did not faint politely. Oh no, she went down like the kingdom had just unplugged her personally. Aunties of the royal line, the headmaid shrieked. Too late. Queen Melira was already horizontal, limbs arranged in a position that screamed, I warned this boy for 27 years. Servants rushed, guards panicked. One poor footman whispered, Is this a weekly thing? Oren did not move. Where the man stood there calmly sipping his drink, like his mother did not just perform a full theatrical shutdown on imported marble. The royal physician burst into the room moments later, already tired. He hadn't even asked what happened yet. Experience had taught him it was always something unnecessary. He knelt beside the queen, checked her pulse, sighed deeply, then looked up at Oren with the exhausted eyes of a man who deserved double pay. What did you say to her this time? Oren tilted his head slightly. I shared good news. The physician stared, long, judgmentally. Queen Melira's fingers twitched, then her eyes fluttered open. First thing she saw? Her son. Standing there looking hopeful, her eye twitched. My son, she rasped weakly. Oren immediately stepped forward, all smooth concern. Yes, a mother? She grabbed his sleeve with surprising strength for someone who just visited the afterlife. "Tell me," she whispered dangerously, "that you did not just choose a woman who was publicly rearranging her husband's skeleton." Oren considered. Thought about it. Then, because this man fears nothing, he nodded once. "Yes." The Queen inhaled so sharply the physician flinched. Melira slowly sat up, dignity struggling to respawn. "Oren Valcrest," she said, voice trembling with royal stress. "You saw a woman committing street warfare." She pointed dramatically toward the window, like the chaos was still visible from space. "And your first thought was marriage?" Oren rested one hand behind his back, composed, unbothered, frankly glowing with dangerous confidence. "Mother," he said smoothly, "did you see her wrist control?" The physician turned his head away. The footman bit his lip. Queen Melira closed her eyes, counted to 3, opened them again, still disappointed. "Do you even know her name?" Melira demanded. "Not yet." "Do you know her background?" "Working on it." "Do you know if she even likes you?" Oren paused. Finally, a crack in the armor. "That," he admitted calmly, "is a future problem." The Queen pressed her fingers to her temples. "Oren, my only son. My retirement plan." "Yes, Mother?" She leaned forward slowly. Very slowly. "You cannot court a married Omega you saw mid-assault." Oren's brow lifted slightly. "Formerly married," he corrected gently. "Give her about 48 hours." The physician made a choking sound. "Because fate enjoys multitasking." Across town, but Serenia Vale was having the worst paperwork day of her adult life. Her husband, soon-to-be ex-husband, sat across from her looking like a man who had realized too late that actions come with consequences, and sometimes flying footwear. "You embarrassed me today," he muttered bitterly. Serenia blinked once. Slow. Dangerous. "Embarrassed you?" she repeated softly. He leaned back, gaining the false confidence of a man who had clearly forgotten recent events. "You didn't have to make a scene." Silence fell in the small office, heavy, thick. The clerk quietly slid her chair back 2 inches. For safety. Serenia leaned forward slightly, voice calm. Dead calm. "You snuck another woman toward my front door," she said. "You did it in daylight. You did it wearing the shirt I bought you." She tilted her head. Soft smile. "So help me understand, which part was supposed to be quiet?" The man had the survival instincts of expired milk, because he scoffed. Actually scoffed. "You're overreacting." The clerk stopped breathing. Serenia stared at him, long enough for regret to begin forming in real time. Then she reached forward, picked up the divorce papers, signed her name with one smooth, elegant stroke, and slid them back across the table. Done. Finished. Spiritually moisturized. Back at the palace. Queen Melira was still recovering when Oren adjusted his cuffs and spoke with the confidence of a man about to ruin several people's peace. "I'll have the carriage prepared tomorrow," he said calmly. Melira froze. "For what?" Oren smiled. Dangerous. Certain. "Boss, I'm going to meet my future wife properly." Across the city, Serenia Vale stepped out of the courthouse and froze. Because waiting at the curb, polished, immaculate, extremely suspicious, was a royal carriage. Serenia Vale had exactly 3 goals that morning. Finalize her divorce, go home in peace, avoid committing any additional public felonies before noon. Unfortunately, the universe had scheduled her for nonsense. The courthouse doors swung open behind her as Serenia stepped into the afternoon light, rolling her shoulders like a woman who had just removed 180 pounds of disappointment from her life. Freedom smelled wonderful, fresh, uncomplicated, not wearing cheap cologne and bad decisions. She exhaled slowly. Finally, she muttered. One of the clerks behind her whispered, "She looks too calm." Another whispered back, "Or that's the calm of someone who has already fought today." Correct. Very correct. Serenia descended the steps with the steady confidence of a woman ready to go home, drink something strong, and ignore men for at least 6 to 8 business months. Then she stopped, because parked directly in front of the courthouse was a royal carriage, polished, gold-trimmed, shining like it paid taxes on time. Serenia blinked once, slow, suspicious. "No," she said quietly, because she believed in many things. Coincidences were not one of them. The carriage door opened. A liveried driver stepped down and bowed respectfully. "Lady Serenia Vale?" Her eyes narrowed. "Yes." "The king requests an audience." Pause. Long pause. Serenia looked left, looked right, looked back at the driver. "You have the wrong exhausted woman." The driver did not move. "Or His Majesty was very specific, my lady." Serenia pressed her fingers to the bridge of her nose. Of course he was, because clearly the universe woke up today and chose personal inconvenience. Inside the palace, King Oren Valcrest stood by the window, looking entirely too pleased with himself. Queen Melira Valcrest stood behind him, looking like her blood pressure had started a side quest. "You sent a carriage," she said flatly. "Yes." "To the recently divorced Omega." "Yes." "The one who body-checked her husband into personal growth." Oren turned slightly. Mild smile. "Mother, when you describe her like that, it sounds impressive." Melira stared at the ceiling briefly, as if asking the ancestors for patience or early retirement. The palace doors opened, where Serenia Vale walked in like a woman who refused to be emotionally dazzled by expensive architecture. Servants subtly leaned to look. Guards tried not to stare. One maid whispered, "That's her?" Another whispered back, "I understand the king." Serenia stopped in the center of the hall, hands relaxed at her sides, expression calm, eyes sharp. King Oren stepped forward, tall, composed, very much aware of his own face. Their gazes met properly this time. And listen carefully. This was not soft music energy. This was two strong personalities quietly measuring each other like professional problems. Serenia spoke first, because of course she did. "Your Majesty," she said evenly, "if this is about taxes, I promise you I have already suffered enough this week." Oren's mouth twitched. Oh, she had jokes. Dangerous. "I assure you," he replied smoothly, "if this were about taxes, I would have sent paperwork." He took one slow step closer. "This required my personal attention." Serenia folded her arms, not intimidated, not charmed, just evaluating. "And what," she asked coolly, "could possibly require the king's personal attention from me?" Oren held her gaze, completely serious, utterly shameless. "I would like you to marry me." Silence. Deep. Spiritual. A servant dropped a tray somewhere in the distance. Serenia blinked. Once. Twice. Then she looked him up and down slowly, not admiring, auditing. "You must be," she said carefully, "deeply unserious." From the balcony above, Queen Melira closed her eyes. Because yes, he was. But King Oren Valcrest did not laugh, did not backtrack, did not even blink. Instead, he tilted his head slightly and said, calm as a man who had already committed to the chaos, "On the contrary, Lady Serenia." A small, dangerous smile appeared. "I have never been more serious about making a bad decision in my life." Serenia's eyes narrowed, because for the first time since this man opened his mouth, she was interested. Just a little. And that was extremely dangerous. If Serenia Vale had a coin for every time a powerful man made a ridiculous proposal this week, She would have exactly 1 coin. But the fact that it happened at all was already too much. The grand hall was so quiet, you could hear servants reconsidering their career choices. Serenia stared at King Oren Valcrest, like she was deciding whether he needed medical evaluation or spiritual intervention. "You want," she said slowly, "or to marry me?" "Correct." "The recently divorced woman you saw in the street?" "Yes." "The one who was mid-scandal?" Oren's mouth curved slightly. "Your form was excellent, if that helps." From the balcony, Queen Melira Valcrest physically leaned on the railing for support, because at this point, she was just here for survival. Serenia uncrossed her arms, took 1 slow step closer. Close enough now to properly inspect the king's face, like a woman who refused to be emotionally tricked by good bone structure. "Your Majesty," she said evenly, "have you recently suffered a head injury?" A servant coughed violently. Oren, the menace, only smiled. "Not to my knowledge." She circled him once, not flirtatious, predatory, curious. "You don't know me," she continued. "Or you don't like me." "You certainly don't love me." She stopped in front of him again. "So, explain," Serenia finished calmly, "why exactly you woke up today and chose confusion." "For the first time since this entire circus began," Oren answered without teasing. "I don't love you," he said plainly. The room stilled. Even Melira straightened slightly. Well, at least the boy still had sense somewhere. But Oren continued. "I don't know you well enough to claim anything so dramatic." Serenia's expression didn't change. Good. She preferred honesty to sweet nonsense. Then he added, voice quieter but steady. "But I know interest when I see it." There it was. The shift, small, dangerous. Serenia's eyes narrowed just a fraction. Oren clasped his hands behind his back, controlled, deliberate. "Whereas this would be a contract marriage," he said smoothly. Melira inhaled sharply. Oh, he came prepared. Serenia lifted one brow. "Go on." 3 months, Oren continued. "You gain royal protection, financial independence, and complete freedom from your former husband's lingering stupidity." Accurate, painfully accurate. He tilted his head slightly. "And when the contract ends," he finished calmly, "we part ways cleanly." Silence stretched. Serenia studied him carefully now, not dismissing, not agreeing, calculating. "And what," she asked coolly, "do you gain from this arrangement, Your Majesty?" Oren didn't even hesitate. "You." Straight, simple, uncomfortable. From above, Queen Melira whispered to herself, "He has lost his mind completely." Serenia's lips twitched despite herself. Just barely. Dangerous development. She stepped closer. Close enough now that the air between them felt aware. "And after 3 months?" she asked quietly. Oren met her gaze without flinching. "After 3 months," he said, "you can go back to terrifying civilians in peace." There was a beat of silence. Then, Serenia huffed, not quite a laugh, but dangerously close. "Progress." Serenia looked at him long and hard. Then she said the one sentence that made Queen Melira grip the balcony like her life alert had just activated. "Bring me the contract." Oren's smile deepened. Hook set, line tight. But Serenia wasn't finished, because as she turned slightly to leave, she added coolly over her shoulder, "And Your Majesty?" "Yes?" If this turns out to be nonsense, her eyes flicked back to him, sharp and calm. "I hit accurately." Queen Melira sat down immediately, or because recovery was no longer an option. By noon the next day, 3 palace lawyers had developed stress headaches, and Serenia Vale hadn't even raised her voice yet. The royal negotiation chamber was designed to intimidate visiting dignitaries. High ceilings, long table, chairs that practically whispered, "Sign carefully." Unfortunately for the room's reputation, Serenia walked in like she paid rent there. Calm, composed, wearing a simple dark dress that said, "I am not here to be dazzled by your furniture." At the head of the table sat King Oren Valcrest, looking entirely too relaxed for a man about to legally complicate his own life. To the side, Queen Melira Valcrest sat with the stiff posture of someone spiritually preparing for nonsense. 3 royal lawyers waited with ink, parchment, and rising blood pressure. She didn't sit immediately, didn't smile, didn't waste time. "Let's begin," Serenia said. One lawyer straightened so fast his chair squeaked. Oren gestured smoothly to the seat across from him. "Direct, I like that." Serenia sat, folded her hands, focused. "All right, Your Majesty," she said evenly. "Explain exactly how this arrangement benefits me, in practical terms, not poetic ones." One lawyer mouthed, "Thank you." Finally, an adult in the room. Oren steepled his fingers. Professional now, still dangerous. "You will receive full royal protection," he began. "Independent financial accounts in your name. Private residence access within the palace grounds. And complete legal separation from your former husband's interference." Serenia nodded slowly. Reasonable. Suspiciously reasonable. She tapped the table once. "Can I end my autonomy?" Oren didn't hesitate. "Untouched." Queen Melira's eyebrow twitched. Because this boy was negotiating like a man who had already emotionally invested and refused to admit it. Serenia turned slightly towards the stack of documents. "Amend Clause 7, she said calmly. All 3 lawyers froze. One blinked. "Your ladyship?" "Clause 7, Serenia repeated patiently. "The public conduct section. The wording is too vague." She looked directly at Oren. "If this is a contract marriage, I don't perform decorative obedience." The silence that followed? Thick, respectful, dangerously impressed. Oren's mouth curved slowly. Oh, she came to play. "Adjust it," he told the lawyers. Quills started scribbling, aggressively, but Melira leaned toward her son and whispered tightly, "You are letting her rewrite royal legal language." Oren didn't even look at her. "Mother," he murmured back, "I prefer competent chaos to decorative silence." The queen closed her eyes briefly. Somewhere, her ancestors were stress knitting. When the edits were complete, Serenia leaned back slightly, studying him again, carefully. "One more thing, Your Majesty." Oren nodded once. "Ask." Her voice was calm, but sharp underneath. "If during these 3 months I decide this arrangement is intolerable, I walk away. No resistance, no retaliation, no royal pressure." One lawyer dropped his quill. Melira inhaled. Because now we were testing the man's actual sanity. Oren held Serenia's gaze for a long moment. Then he said simply, "Agreed." The room went still. Even the air blinked, and the contract was placed between them, ink fresh, terms clear, consequences pending. Serenia picked up the pen, paused, looked at Oren one last time. "You understand," she said quietly, "that I don't scare easily." Oren leaned back slightly, completely calm. "That," he said, "was never the concern." Their eyes locked. Something subtle shifted. Not soft, not romantic, but definitely not neutral anymore. Serenia signed, smooth, final. The scratch of the pen echoed like a starting gun. Queen Melira was still processing the legal damage when Oren rose to his feet. "Well," he said lightly, "we should begin preparations." Melira narrowed her eyes. "Preparations for what?" Oren adjusted his cuffs, entirely too composed. "Our wedding, Mother." Across the table. Serenia Vale blinked. Just once, or because suddenly, This fake marriage was moving very, very fast. The royal wedding announcement caused 3 noblewomen to develop sudden migraines, 2 ambitious mothers to cancel pre-planned daughter ambushes, and 1 elderly duke to whisper, "This is what happens when boys aren't supervised." The palace had not known peace since the invitations went out. The grand hall buzzed with the polite, venom-coated energy of high society under emotional stress. Fans fluttered, jewels sparkled, reputations quietly cracked. At the far end of the hall stood King Oren Valcrest, looking like a man who had absolutely no regrets and several enemies. Beside the ceremonial aisle waited Queen Melira Valcrest, who had dressed beautifully for the occasion and was still internally processing her son's life choices. A noblewoman whispered behind her fan, "She can't possibly be suitable." Another murmured back, "He saw her in the street, I heard." A third added, scandalized, "In daylight." Melira's eye twitched, the doors opened. And listen carefully, because this was important. Serenia Vale did not float in. She did not glide. She did not perform soft, delicate bride energy. Number Serenia walked in like a woman fully aware she had signed paperwork and was here to complete the assignment. Her gown was elegant but simple. No excessive sparkle. No desperate theatrics. Just clean lines and quiet confidence that made several noblewomen sit up straighter out of pure competitive stress. One court lady whispered, "Oh." Another whispered back, "I understand the king a little." Queen Melira pretended not to hear that. For her own blood pressure. At the altar, Oren's posture shifted just slightly when Serenia approached. Not obvious, not dramatic, but the queen saw it. Unfortunately, his attention sharpened, focused, like a man realizing his harmless contract marriage was developing personality. Serenia stopped in front of him, met his gaze calmly. Not shy, not flustered, just present, dangerous in its own quiet way. The officiant cleared his throat nervously, because even he could feel this marriage had energy. "Do you, King Oren Valcrest, take—" "I do." The officiant blinked. "I had more lines." "Proceed," Oren said smoothly. From the side, Melira pressed her fingers to her temple. This boy was speed-running her stress. The officiant turned to Serenia carefully. "And do you, Lady Serenia Vale?" Serenia paused. Not long. Just enough to make 3 noblewomen lean forward and 1 duke stop breathing. Then she said calmly, "I do." Gasps fluttered softly through the hall. Because suddenly, this was real. As the ceremony concluded and they stepped closer, Oren leaned slightly toward her, voice low, careful, amused. "Try not to punch anyone during the reception," he murmured. "The carpets are expensive." Serenia didn't even look at him, but her lips twitched. "Your Majesty," she murmured back, "control your guests and your carpets will survive." From the front row, Queen Melira closed her eyes briefly. Because why were they already like this? Music began. Guests shifted. Political smiles activated. But beneath the polite atmosphere, tension, curiosity, and the growing, though dangerous awareness that the king's new bride was not here to play decorative furniture. One noblewoman fanned herself aggressively. "This will either be very entertaining," she whispered, "or very expensive." Correct on both counts. Later that night, the palace corridors were quiet. Too quiet. King Oren stood outside the door to the private royal suite. Inside waited his brand-new contractual wife. No audience, no court, no polite distractions, just the 2 of them. Oren exhaled slowly and pushed the door open. Because fake marriage or not, tonight was the first time they would be truly alone. And neither of them was as unaffected as they were pretending. If you had asked Serenia Vale that morning what her evening plans were, she would have said. Finalize divorce, eat something peaceful, and then sleep like a woman free of nonsense. But what she did not plan was standing in a royal bedroom the size of her former apartment, freshly married to a dangerously calm man who looked like he made bad decisions on purpose. Life comes at you fast. The royal suite was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that made every small movement sound suspicious. Serenia stood near the window, arms loosely folded, posture relaxed but alert, like a woman who refused to be caught emotionally unprepared in expensive surroundings. Behind her, the door clicked shut. King Oren Valcrest entered fully, unhurried, unbothered, entirely too comfortable in his own palace. For a moment, neither of them spoke, because despite the contract, despite the very clear terms, there was still something dangerously human about being alone together for the first time. Well, Oren said lightly, unloosening his cuffs, this is significantly less violent than when we first met. Serenia didn't turn, but her voice came back smooth. You say that like the night is still young. Oren's mouth twitched. Not fear, not exactly amusement, but definitely interest. Serenia finally turned to face him fully, clear-eyed, calm, professional about this whole situation. Let's be very clear, Your Majesty, she said. Oren leaned one shoulder casually against the table. Please. This arrangement works, Serenia continued, because expectations are controlled. She gestured lightly between them. 3 months, mutual benefit, minimal emotional confusion. Oren nodded slowly. Reasonable, logical, suspiciously mature. Then, because he enjoys living dangerously, he asked, And if confusion happens anyway? Serenia's eyes narrowed slightly, not flustered, but alert now. That, she said coolly, would be unfortunate for whoever started it. The man actually smiled. This woman was going to be a problem, a fascinating one, but definitely a problem. Serenia glanced towards the massive bed, then back at him. One brow lifted. We should also address the obvious logistical issue. Oren followed her gaze. Ah, yes. The bed. Large, luxurious, very much designed for people with significantly less emotional caution. He looked back at her calmly. Agreed. Beat. Then he added, perfectly serious. I don't snore, if that helps negotiations. Serenia stared at him. Long, flat. Your Majesty. Yes? If you snore, I will relocate you personally. From across the room, Queen Melira, who was absolutely not present but would somehow sense this spiritually, would have needed tea. But they settled into an uneasy truce of shared space, not intimate, not distant, just two very aware adults pretending the air between them was behaving normally. Oren moved toward the writing desk, Serenia toward the window again, but the room felt different now. Quieter. Charged in that subtle way neither of them was ready to acknowledge out loud. Finally, Oren spoke again, softer this time. You know, he said, most people were terrified of you yesterday. Serenia didn't look back. They should mind their business. Oren's gaze rested on her a moment longer than necessary. I wasn't. That made her pause. Just briefly. Much later that night, when the palace had gone fully quiet, Serenia lay awake, staring at the ceiling, very much aware of the calm breathing from the other side of the massive bed. This was fine. Temporary, but controlled. Perfectly manageable. Then, from the darkness, Oren's voice came, low and very much awake. You're not asleep either. Serenia's eyes narrowed in the dark, because apparently, peace wasn't included in this contract. It was the kind of morning that smelled faintly of disaster, but also of satisfaction, like toast you accidentally burned but still wanted to eat because it was yours. King Oren Valcrest sipped his tea with the serenity of a man who knew chaos was coming and had personally RSVP'd to it. Across the city, the ex-husband, Darian Velmeyer, had finally processed that divorce wasn't just a suggestion. He stomped toward the palace gates with his mistress, still clinging to the false hope that somehow, some way, he could retrieve anything from his previous life. Spoiler alert, he couldn't, and the guards at the gates recognized him immediately. "Sir," one said politely, "you do realize the woman you are here for is now married?" Darian's confidence wavered for approximately 0.7 seconds. "Married?" he gasped. "Yes, to the king." The guards exchanged glances. One whispered, "This is why people read contracts." The ex-husband tried to protest, but as he stepped forward, a figure appeared at the top of the palace stairs. Serenia Vale. Arms crossed, expression calm, eyes sharp. Her presence alone made Darian's knees wobble, because this was the woman who could have crushed him in the street, and now she was married to a king. Darian approached, trembling slightly. "Serenia, don't," she said softly. "Just don't." He stammered. We... Serenia held up a hand, perfectly calm. "Darian, let me help you understand something. You made your choices. I signed the paperwork. The king witnessed it. And now?" She gestured vaguely to King Oren Valcrest, who was slowly descending the stairs with that calm, predatory grace that only men who are dangerously unbothered can pull off. Darian's mistress shrieked. "Wait, what? Married?" "Yes," Serenia said sweetly. "In daylight." The crowd of palace servants, delivery boys, and random nobles that had gathered to witness this minor scandal murmured in unison. "Oh no." Darian swallowed hard. The mistake of a lifetime had just become a headline. Oren stepped forward, hands behind his back, voice soft but lethal. "Darian Velmeyer," he said, "you are here uninvited." "Yes, Your Majesty." Stop," Oren interrupted smoothly. "Do not speak. You are outclassed, outranked, and for the sake of all witnesses, absolutely outmatched." Darian realized at that exact moment he had no escape route. "And the mistress?" She started hyperventilating. Serenia smirked faintly. "I told you I hit accurately." Oren raised a single brow. "And I don't tolerate chaos in my palace." The ex-husband tried one last gambit. I just want to explain." Oren clapped his hands slowly. "Explain?" "Explain what?" Serenia asked, tone casual but sharp enough to slice knives. "Why you..." Darian began. "No," Serenia interrupted. "You embarrassed yourself enough already." Oren nodded, his gaze locking with hers. "I approve this verdict." The crowd of onlookers, who had been holding their collective breath, audibly exhaled. Serenia stepped forward. Her presence radiated calm, lethal authority. "You tried to sneak someone into my house. I'm in daylight. You failed. Your mistress thought she was clever. She was wrong. You?" She shook her head slowly. "Hopeless." Darian crumbled visibly. Serenia's tone softened, just slightly. Dangerous softness. "Consider this a warning. My patience has limits. Exceed them and..." She gestured vaguely at her very capable hands. "Well, you've seen what I can do." Even Oren had to fight the urge to chuckle. Once Darian and the mistress had been escorted out by guards, defeated, humiliated, and sweating from the humiliation alone. Oren and Serenia were left standing in the palace courtyard. Oren tilted his head, expression calm but amused. "I must admit," he said, "watching you handle that was impressive." Serenia shrugged lightly. "I've had practice." Oren smiled faintly. Dangerous. Teasing. "Practice or preparation for chaos like me?" She narrowed her eyes. "Perhaps both, but mostly I prefer to maintain dignity." Oren laughed softly. The sound echoed off the palace walls. "I may regret marrying you." Serenya's lips twitched. "Likewise, but at least we'll be equally dangerous." Later, alone in the royal suite, the tension was palpable. Serenya unpacked her minimal belongings with deliberate calm. Oren observed, leaning casually against the doorway. "Are you always this efficient?" he asked lightly. "Always," she replied without looking up. "You?" He smirked. "Sometimes, mostly for entertainment." She finally turned, meeting his gaze directly. "You realize," she said quietly, "that a contract does not cover unintended consequences?" Oren stepped closer. "Oh, I am well aware, but unintended consequences can be enjoyable." Serenya rolled her eyes, but the faint twitch of her lips betrayed her amusement. Down the hall, Queen Melira Valcrest sighed deeply. "Disaster," she muttered, "but oddly satisfying and terrifying." The servants nodded. The palace walls themselves seemed to sigh in collective anxiety. Because this marriage, it was already rewriting the rules. As the palace fell silent and the moonlight spilled across the suite, Oren and Serenya sat across from each other. "You realize," Oren said softly, "that I am not good at following contracts either?" Serenya's eyes narrowed. "I've noticed." Oren smiled faintly, leaning back. "Good. Then we'll keep things interesting." Serenya returned the gaze, calm, sharp, slightly amused. "And if this turns into chaos?" she asked. "I think," Oren replied, that voice low, "that chaos suits us both perfectly." A pause. The air between them crackled. A contract marriage, dangerous, controlled, and already very, very real. The palace was quiet. Quiet in the sense that nothing in this story had ever been quiet before. King Oren Valcrest sipped tea in his favorite chair, one leg casually draped over the armrest, looking exactly as unbothered as the day he first saw Serenya beating her husband in the street. Serenya Vale walked in from the gardens, barefoot, hair messy from wind, arms holding a basket of freshly baked bread she had stolen from the palace kitchens. Because why not? "Did you eat the last one?" she asked, arching a brow. "I did not," Oren replied, though there was clearly a suspicious crumb on his lap. "Then I guess it's mine," she said smugly, tossing him a bread roll like a tiny but delicious warning. He caught it, chewed slowly. "You're terrifying," he admitted. "And you," she replied lightly, "are still completely insane. Good match, really." Queen Melira Valcrest sat in the hallway, quietly documenting her son's every move in what she called the official chronicles of my son's incomprehensible life decisions. "I must say," she muttered to herself, "he actually seems happy, terrifyingly happy." She sipped her tea, shaking slightly. She had come to accept that no amount of fainting, shouting, or dramatic advice had ever stopped Oren from doing exactly what he wanted. "Disaster, but entertaining," she whispered again. Downstairs, the servants exchanged knowing glances. "Do you think this is permanent?" one asked nervously. "Permanent," another replied, "and terrifyingly fun to watch." The cook, who had been subjected to multiple Oren plus Serenya breakfast experiments, whispered, "If they ever fight, I'm hiding in the wine cellar." News of the royal marriage had spread across the city. Stories of Serenya's street justice and Oren's calm obsession became legends. Neighborhood kids whispered, "She's married to a king. He's still terrified of her punching people." Merchants sold mugs. "I saw Serenya hit a man, and the king approved." And somewhere, Darian Velmeyer quietly counted his remaining dignity, which had been mostly lost in public. Back in the private royal suite, Oren leaned over the balcony, watching the sunset. "You know," he said casually, "I think this marriage might be more enjoyable than I expected." Serenia raised one brow. That's faint praise. I'll take it, he replied. Or especially with you hitting people on my behalf. She smirked, brushing crumbs off the table. You get to live dangerously. You should be grateful. He grinned. Grateful and terrified. She laughed softly. Quiet, controlled, but with just enough warmth to melt the last of his carefully constructed calm. And for the first time, they both knew. This contract marriage? It had already mutated into something much, much better, something messy, something chaotic, something real, something them. Later that night, as the palace fell asleep, Oren whispered softly from across the bed, "Do you want to hear the funniest thing?" Serenia rolled her eyes. Probably. I think this is the start of happily ever after. Serenia laughed. Low, dangerous, warm. With optional chaos, I hope. He winked. Always optional. Mostly inevitable. And the palace, for once, didn't argue. Because in a kingdom where an alpha king meets a lethal omega, chaos isn't over. It's just married now.